In this edition of Art Rocks, see how science meets art in botanical paintings.
When we commissioned Margaret Stones, we chose her because of the fact that she was such a skilled botanical artist.
Tapping into the artistic spirit in all of us.
Sculpting taught me about patience, and it also taught me a lot about life.
Intimate portraits of the greatest generation.
I get to give back through art by preserving history.
And the piano bar rolls onto the boardwalk.
People walk by, they want to know a little bit about me and why I'm out here and why I've got a piano on the beach.
It's all ahead on this edition of Art Rocks.
Art Rocks is made possible by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and by viewers like you.
Hello, I'm James Fox Smith, publisher of Country Roads magazine, and this is Art Rocks. We begin our show today with a look at a special collection of paintings commissioned over a 10-year period. Focusing on Louisiana's flora, artist Margaret Stones crafted a beautiful legacy of botanical paintings. Here's a look.
Throughout her storied career, Margaret Stones strived to share with the world both her love of art and her passion for nature. A native of Melbourne, Australia, in 1976, Stones came to Louisiana to create a series of paintings chronicling Louisiana's native flora as a project celebrating the bicentennial of the United States. In Louisiana, she found some of nature's greatest treasures, as well as a second home.
I just love coming to Louisiana. I have enjoyed the state so much. I like its great variety. I think it must be the most interesting state in the Union.
When we commissioned Margaret Stones, we chose her because of the fact that she was such a skilled botanical artist. We considered her as probably the best in the world. Her art speaks for itself.
Looking at her artwork, it's almost like looking at a real plant, having a real plant in front of you.
What was at first a small project quickly evolved when people saw the results of her work.
Once the Chancellor and others had seen the 6 drawings, said, you know, let's make this a bigger project.
Maybe we're thinking too small in this. Why not get Margaret Stones, commission her to do a 10-year project to paint the native flora of the state of Louisiana.
Stones preferred to work from living specimens, so much of her time in Louisiana was spent traversing the state, searching for the area's rarest plants. As a botanical artist, committing these images to paper is a balancing act.
You have to be interested in the botanical or scientific side equally with the artistic or aesthetic side, and you have to bring the two pieces together. You mustn't make them too botanical and scientific, or they can be rather dull. You mustn't make them too arty, or they're rather, it's rather sentimental and dreadful.
Throughout her time in Baton Rouge, Stones had a great impact on the people she encountered.
She became a very good friend to a lot of people who invited her into their homes. Margaret's excellent company.
We chose her because of her skill. Without a lot of planning and forethought, we ended up with a most delightful lady. She fell in love with Louisiana, and Louisiana fell in love with her.
Over 14 years, she completed over 200 drawings, which were celebrated in a book edition by the LSU Press in 1991 called Flora of Louisiana. The original watercolors are held and curated by the Hill Memorial Library at LSU, where they may still be appreciated.
Margaret, many people would say, is the greatest living botanical artist today.
Our goal was to create something of enduring values, and I think the project really turned out to be exactly that.
Now let's take a look at some of the upcoming arts events happening across Louisiana. For more information on these events, visit our website at lpb.org/artrocks. And to find more arts activities, check out countryroadsmag.com. Up next, Vegas, home of showgirls and casinos, also hosts creative professionals that span the spectrum of the visual and performing arts. Local sculptor Sharon Gainesburg takes us to her studio to share her knowledge of crafts and insight into the artist in all of us.
My name is Sharon Gainesburg. I'm a sculptor, teacher, and creativity coach. I have been sculpting now for 40+ years. I have been in Las Vegas coming up on 9 years. This is a sculpture that I did recently. It was a very thin piece. This stone comes from southern Utah. Here we have a piece that is local, and this is called root beer or Nevada alabaster. I'm originally from Philadelphia, where I started sculpting in clay when I was 20. I stayed with clay for 10 years. Someone saw my clay work and said, "Oh, you have to take stone." And I bought a piece of stone and 3 hits on the stone, and that was it. It was a relationship that I formed with this material that's millions of years old instantaneously. This stone, also alabaster, comes from Sicily. This is called Eternal Light, and it's actually my most recent sculpture. To sculpt, you have to be very committed. It's almost like having a fire in your belly. And you also have to be very patient. Sculpting taught me about patience, and it also taught me a lot about life. Because when you're sculpting and a piece falls off that you weren't counting on and your design is ruined, you have to dig deeper to come up with a better design to incorporate the area that's missing. But that's what we have to do in life. Something happens, you have to take a detour. There are 5 basic steps in sculpting stone. First is blocking out your form. The second is refining it. The third is dry sanding it. The fourth is wet sanding. And the 5th step is putting some type of liquid sealer and buffing it. This is an automatic power-driven chisel. This is going to make a little bit of dust. My favorite step is the conceptualization of finding the forms to express what I want to say. The process is fluid when you just go with whatever your intuitive self is telling you to do. Well, if I had to put a label on the type of work that I do, I call it abstract realism. You can always find a realistic form somewhere buried in the abstract forms. And I like to do that because I want people to use their intuitive sense or an emotional connection to the work. Welcome to the studio where all the magic happens. These are my rock stars. I'm a teacher coming up on about 37 years. What I tell my students is, you come here 3 hours once a week, but while you're doing your job, or if you are retired, be more aware of being in the now. Just take a few minutes every day and look at your surroundings and tune in to what's around you. Look at color, smells, form, and you will start developing a language.
Did I have this shape in mind? No, it's an abstract. It was one solid, almost square piece, and what Sharon is teaching me is to continue to round it and get rid of the flat parts. And so as I work, I see.
I've enjoyed every moment of working on this piece. Even the painstaking parts of the sanding, things like that, have really been a joy. So in the process, all your troubles melt away.
I believe that we are all creative, but most of the time the focus on one's life is providing an income, and we put creativity aside.
In every way, it is worth, I couldn't be paid enough to have the fulfillment and the joy that I have out of this. I just feel alive again. You know, there's something that tapped that was inside of me, a passion of some sort that I just never realized until I started sculpting. I can barely tie a ribbon, I can barely tie a knot, but I can sure bang on a rock and create something.
To me, it's a spiritual thing because God chips at us to try to make us come out beautiful, and it's just too amazing for me.
There's a universal consciousness that stone has. And if I told students when they took the class, they would say, cuckoo, but they get it once they start working with it. When a person is dealing with frustrations in life, they're going through rough times, and we all have had it. Come here and take it out on the stone. Be kind to each other, but take it out on the stone. Beat the heck out of the stone. People need to get in touch with a piece of their soul that they never knew existed. When you believe in something and you stay with it, and you believe in yourself for so many years, the rewards are great. What I'd like people to know about me as an artist is that I've always lived my truth, and you see that in my work.
For more information, visit gainsbourgstudio.com. They are called the greatest generation, the thousands of men and women who served in World War II. Up next, we take you to a senior living facility in Arizona that has created an exhibit dedicated to these brave men and women. Here's a look at the exhibit and a chance to meet the photographer and the veterans themselves.
Each of these photographs has a story behind it, a story of courage, perseverance, and fortitude.
I was a fighter pilot in a P-38 Lightning, and I was in the Army Air Corps.
Bill Lancaster was a teenager when he found himself in the middle of World War II in a plane that he had never flown before. This photo shows the cockpit of the plane, hundreds of buttons, and Bill says he had no idea what many of them were for.
Well, this particular airplane was, number one, it was multi-engine, it was 2 engines. And all my flying had been done in a single engine airplane. And I got into an outfit where all they had was the twin engine airplanes. And I had to go out and learn to fly by myself because it doesn't have one fitted out for an instructor to be in there to give me any instruction. So you had to learn to fly the thing and survive it.
That lack of training proved to be deadly. Of the 90 men Bill served with, 67 of them never came home. Even now, it's difficult for Bill to remember his time in the war and those who did not return safely to their families.
It's hard to see. I don't think anybody plays it up the bad side or knows the bad side. I had guys that went with me to combat. They came over there and went down, and the first time they got in an airplane over there and tried to get up and fly, they killed themselves.
Del Ryland was a farm boy turned fighter pilot. He joined the ROTC and soon found himself here in Arizona.
I got my wings right here at Mesa at Williams Field, went over military to Italy, and flew there 30 commissions, and the war ended.
Bill and Del are just 2 of the veterans whose photographs are part of an installation at Belmont Village, an assisted living facility in Scottsdale. The nearly 24 portraits were taken by critically acclaimed photographer Thomas Sanders. What started a few years ago as a school assignment for Tom has transformed into a way to preserve these stories before they are lost for good.
My senior year of college, I had a homework assignment just to photograph a portrait of somebody. And living right around the corner from me was this big giant retirement community company. And I happened to go there asking the retirement community if there was an interesting person to photograph. And they said, hey, we have this World War II hero.
Tom's work caught the attention of Belmont's CEO, Patricia Will. She asked him to take portraits of veterans in all of their facilities.
And the reaction that we got far surpassed anything that I could have imagined. Not just because there emerged a storyline from each of these extraordinary veterans, but also because as a result of sharing their stories, often for the first time, they began to engage with one another in very different ways. Experiences that they had, often buried in their long-term memory, emerged and created a certain kind of camaraderie among them.
For Muriel Pelham, the camaraderie continues to this day. At 92 years old, she volunteers with local veterans groups. Stationed in Europe as a nurse, she spent several years there and came back stateside and continued working in various hospitals. Muriel was one of 350,000 women who served during the war.
I guess it means that I was probably helping the women to crack the ceiling, because we had a hard time in a lot of opportunities to advance and do other than routine care. So I was glad I was able to do that.
With 1,500 World War II veterans dying each day in America, capturing these photos and the stories is crucial, but it's more than that.
What's special about this project is that sometimes the veterans have never had the opportunity to share their stories. So with this project of photographing and interviewing the veterans are able to be honored for their first time. And I think that's something very, very special for myself and for them. In a way, I get to give back through art by preserving history.
World War II and Korean War veteran Carl Moline agrees. He has never really talked about his time aboard a destroyer in the Sea of Japan. The exhibit is a way for his family and friends to learn more.
I think that they can read the items as to what they say, what the different fellows thought about their activity, and about their period of time while they were serving. I don't want it to be lost in antiquity, so anything that can be done and said, pictured, proofed is all to the benefit.
The veterans are all very pleased with how their photos turned out, if not a bit surprised.
Well, there's everybody else. You wonder who it was. Whose picture is it? They're never as flattering as you wish them to be, but they're factual, and that's the way it is.
Well, I was sort of surprised, frankly. I saw myself holding the picture, and of course that I recognized more than the other, because as you get older your features change, let's face it, and I am in my 90s, so I'm up there.
I'm thankful that I still have a head of hair. I guess that's the only thing of appreciation, is I still got a little hair left.
For Tom, this project brings his family history into focus. His great-uncle died in World War II, and his grandfather, a semi-famous photographer, snapped this shot of author Ernest Hemingway. It now sits in the Smithsonian.
Yeah, when I photograph the veterans, I tend to use really dramatic lighting. Some of the veterans have objects from World War II or other wars that they've hung on to like their whole entire life, and so that helps tell their story, so I have them hold that object up. And on top of that, I really try and not overly direct the veterans too much. I have them hold the object. I might have them move a little bit in terms of posing, but I don't want too much of my own idea to be projected onto them. I'm just really trying to capture their essence and their soul.
Tom's portraits are much like the men and women themselves, stark, unyielding, and stoic, with hints of vulnerability. They tell an entire life story, one that will now last forever.
The whole idea behind the project is making people more appreciative of all veterans and soldiers, and through hopefully creating an interesting artistic portrait of the veteran and reading their story, I really hope that draws them in to help put their own lives into perspective.
Tom Sanders' photos can be viewed in the award-winning book titled The Last Good War. Now it's time to explore another of Louisiana's treasures. This week, we'll visit that Art Deco monument, the Louisiana State Capitol.
The imposing structure of the Louisiana State Capitol was the vision of populist Governor Huey P. Long. A National Historic Landmark, it's the tallest building in Baton Rouge at 450 feet and 34 stories. It was 1930, during the Great Depression, when Governor Long put into motion the design team. The state legislature passed a bond issue providing for the $5 million price tag. And before the end of 1930, construction began on the steel-framed and limestone-clad skyscraper. Situated on 27 acres, the Louisiana State Capitol contains a wealth of symbolic art crafted in stone and metal and illustrated in paintings. From the 27th floor observation deck, there's an excellent view of the Mississippi River, as well as the formal gardens below. In the center of the garden lies the burial site of Huey P. Long, who was assassinated in the Capitol building in 1935. The memorial monument bears a bronze likeness of the kingfish standing atop a marble base that includes a representation of the building that exemplifies Long's vision and determination.
In our final segment, we meet the so-called song peddler, a piano man on wheels who shares his music with passers-by on a Florida boardwalk. Take a listen as we learn what it takes to keep the music playing and the good times rolling.
There's nothing like coming out here like this. It's just wonderful. The waves are crashing. It's just tranquil and peaceful. People walk by, they want to know a little bit about me and why I'm out here and why I've got a piano on the beach. I've always wanted to be able to play piano for people in the streets, and I happen to live here, which is the street is the beach. So especially here, the cars driving up and down the beach, but usually I'm on the boardwalk playing for people, and because they don't expect it. They're just blown away when they see the piano out here. I used to work on cruise ships a lot, and one of the agents, or the agent that booked me out there, we were down in Key West about, God, it's 20 years ago just about, and we were watching all the different street entertainers and the buskers, and I said, I would love to be able to come out here and carry my piano and be able to play for these people, because I've never had a chance to do anything like that. He says, well, why don't you build a piano bar bicycle? And it was an ongoing joke for like 20 years. And I thought about it seriously about 3 or 4 years ago. And my wife said, why don't you go ahead and do it? It's a basic setup. I have a mixing board that has my microphone and a quarter-inch jack for my iPhone for the MP4 files that I write. Then you have a rolling cube monitor, which is just a stage monitor for when I play in restaurants and clubs. You have a converter that changes the DC power over to AC power. And you have a deep cycle marine battery here that I've probably put 100 charges on it and it's still good. The pedal for the keyboard is down here. And this is aluminum from shower stalls. And it's just pieced together with binder's twine and epoxy and shelving from the secondhand store also, and it's just glued and pieced together to look like a piano after the skins are put on it. And 16-inch tires that I get from a tool company, and a beat-up Schwinn bicycle that I chopped off. That was my wife's. I cut off here, and you see how easily it handles. It's really easy to drive. It's not transportation, though. It's a contraction. Around 12 o'clock, midday, I'll get the bike and I'll piece it together, put the skins on it, and put the keyboard on top of it, and I'll ride down to the boardwalk and I'll play for a couple of hours.
Using my model, she went away while signing my name.
I wanted to make a gimmick out of something to be able to name myself, and I knew it was going to have a bicycle to it, and I knew I was going to be singing songs, so it just popped in my head, Song Peddler, and it really worked out well. And then with the logo and all that I've got on there with the hair, I've got to keep my hair long now because it works. I can't ever cut my hair again. My favorite music to play is singer-songwriter, stuff like the Elton John and Billy Joel and Dan Fogelberg and Beatles and you know, Jim Croce and Harry Chapin, singer-songwriter stuff from the 60s and 70s especially. I could sit out for about 2 or 3 hours and make about $100 of just tipping, and half of those tips come from people wanting a picture with me, so it's kind of like having a parrot on my shoulder or a monkey to go out and grab a tip. You can't let the money be the reason you do it, but it sure is nice when you get it. I've done nothing but play music all my life. I've done piano bars and been in bands, and I just can't imagine doing anything else, and I'm going to do it until I can't sing anymore. And I'm happy every day. It's just a wonderful life.
I'd stand back and savor the view if I were the king.
That wraps it up for this edition of Art Rocks. Remember, we're always available online at lpb.org/artrocks, where you can catch up on any episodes you've missed and find information on upcoming arts events throughout the state. Until next time, I'm James Fox Smith, and thanks for watching.